Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is George Sanders, as you well know, on Straight Talk. Today I'm going to cover a few matters here that I think that is interesting to you as a taxpayer and a citizen of the town of Littleton. If you didn't see the select board meeting last night, they established what the property tax rate is going to be for 2024 fiscal year. And it's going to be 14, for residents, it's going to be 14.44, I believe. I know it's 14. I think it's 14.44. What is the current rate you pay for 23? The current rate you're paying for 23 is $16.25 per thousand. So that's a big drop, you would think. Yes, it is. But the property value in Littleton has increased. So what does that mean? At the 14.44, you may very well end up paying the same amount that you paid for the property year of 2023, or it may be slightly a little higher. But anyway, the reason that rate came in the way it did is because we've gotten a little bit more of CIP, that's commercial and industrial property, has built up a little bit. We was right at about percentage of the pie, almost 79%. And I think it dropped it down to 70.2 something, which is what I've been saying all along. It's nice to get a little bit more commercial and industrial property to help lower the rate for the resident. But at the same token, the property has gone up in price. So that's where we're at on that. The other thing that I want to point out, and I received a call last Tuesday, which was the 31st of October, from our state representative, James Osorio. And I know that item 19, which was the town amendment to the bylaw, fell. There have been, I guess, rumors that the legislators, James Eldred and James Osorio, was somehow had legislation that was going to be going through the legislature for a change to the MBTA housing regulation that came out. And there was no truth to that. James Eldred nor James Osorio is planning to do anything whatsoever. And there's nothing impending to go before the legislature with regards to the housing. As a matter of fact, he told me on the 30th of October, he called and spoke with the Secretary of Housing, and the Secretary advised him there was going to be no changes to that regulation. No changes. So here we are. We got until December of 24, I guess, for the final decision as to whether we accept or reject that. And I'm hoping that this goes back before the board, the warrant, and they get passed, because we've been having great success with the state with grant programs and so forth. So I hate to see us lose that, because we are very adequate about doing things in a timely manner and ensuring that we get a piece of the pie, because there's our money up there as well. When you think about what is going on, we, the people, elect our representatives and ask them to get as much funding as they can back to the community here in Littleton. And I think the representatives has been doing a good job, because when I found out that on the senior center they cut out the solar system, I in turn contacted Jim Eldred, not Jim Eldred, but Jim Osorio, and asked him to go in and try to get that, I believe at the time it was $271,000, to see if he could get that earmark for Littleton to do that. So I sent a letter to the acting town administrator, and he had the director of EHS to submit a letter up there. So they have that in the works of trying to get money for that. So that's good on that. That's probably the latest on the information with regards to that. Now, one thing that I think that should occur with the next warrant is all that highlight writing in the article of the motion. I think it shouldn't even be there, because it caused nothing but mass confusion and having people to ask questions on it, and they say, oh, it has nothing to do with the motion. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the motion. Why do we have it there? It is a piece of confusing information that shouldn't be there. And I think they should take it out. If they want to give you by each motion, then do it on a separate piece of paper and tell you about that. But what we vote on is the motion. And I think that there's a lot of confusion that's taking place. And I disagree that anything that's very important, it should come forth after the consent, when you have the most people there that can debate the item. So much for the news. Now, I want to get to the planning board with 234 Taylor Street. The marijuana smell that is coming, or had been coming from that facility over there, and becoming a nuisance in that community there. I sent a letter to the planning board and to the select board, and I gave them some ideas as to what I thought should take place. One of the things that I find that, there's no rules and regulation in place to address the marijuana smell. It's a new industry altogether. There are really not no consultants out there that you can bring in to explain with regards to the marijuana smell. So what do? Well, you have to do the best that you can, and you have to look to other industry that's out there. The people on the hydrovac, as far as putting in ductwork and so forth and so on, you can ask about that, or consultants that works in installing ductwork into laboratories where they have working labs that are sealed off, that has a toxic agent in it that is set up on a negative pressure system that goes to a filter system that filters out the danger of the harm that's in the air that's being pulled from that lab, that working lab. So that's the best you can get with regards to that smell. Now, if you go and look up, carbon filters will not take the smell out of the air, but carbon charcoal filters will take the smell out of the air. The smell will attach itself to the charcoal, which neutralizes the air as it comes through that charcoal filter. And that's what we need. We need a negative pressure system, whereas that the growing room, the kitchen, and on 234 Taylor Street, they got a kitchen over there. They got a growing room. They say the growing room has to work on a positive pressure. Well, that's fine. You simply encase the growing room in a room that is set up with negative pressure. So when they go in and out the doors, whatever goes out with the positive pressure pushing it out, then the negative pressure in that room picks it up and sucks it up into the system so it doesn't get outside. The hallways, as you're going from the growing room to the kitchen, the hallways that where you're transporting in of the marijuana, it's likely to cause some smell. So the hallway should be on a negative pressure system as well. They showed that there's a growing room at 234 and says there's 2 ducts that says on negative pressure, but it doesn't say where it goes. Does it just go up into the air, or where does it go? We don't know where it goes. According to the sketch, it didn't show where it was going. So I say that the kitchen is most likely the place is going to produce probably the most smell. Cooking over there, making the products, brownies, whatever, cookies, candy, whatever they're doing over there is probably going to produce the most smell. And now, as they cook that, it has to cool off. It has to go into an area or stay in that area. I would assume it goes into another area. If you have a large operation there, you would probably have a packing and sealing area, which means would be the next area, because the smell from what you just cooked is going to not be as strong as you cooking it over there, but it certainly will have a smell until you seal it off. It is tightened, sealed off, then that will cut the smell at that time. Now they most likely will put it into a storage area to hold for these products to be moved. And when they're moved, maybe they're moved into the dock area or shipping area, which would be another area that might get a little bit of a smell over there, which should be on a negative pressure system. When they raise the door on the docks to load it onto the trucks, the smell doesn't go outside the building. So I guess it's the cost involved that why you find the applicant, in my opinion, probably don't want to put the negative pressure system in. If we are going to have a free smelling community with this type of operation in the community, then we need to have what is known as controlling the smell, not moving the smell around. They're talking about having people to go outside the building and run tests on smell. First of all, it shouldn't be getting outside. Nothing should be seeping outside of the facility walls and getting into the environment. Next, they're saying that there's always going to be marijuana smell. And I'm like, well, if you don't do anything to control the smell, they're absolutely right. There's always going to be marijuana smell. Even if you use ductwork and put a stack on the building to pump that air from inside the building up and it hit into the atmosphere, well, it depends on how high the building is, how high the stack is, and you got to take the weather conditions in consideration: wind, rain, air, snow, sleet, low ceilings. With a low ceiling, it hits, it pushes it back to the ground. So there are a lot of factors that you would have to take into consideration when you're dealing with this. But I think the smart thing to do is that if you really want to be a good neighbor, you ought to put in the equipment that would do the job and alleviate the community having to deal with a nuisance of the smell of marijuana. How you do that? You put in a negative pressure system with carbon charcoal filters, with a suction motor that pulls all of the negative air through those filters and then discharge it into the environment. It depends on how many filters you would have in there as to how many days they would be effective in eliminating the smell. So you would have to do test runs to determine that. And once you determine, then you know, let's say every 20 days, you have to change the filters. The manufacturer normally don't tell you how many days you have that this filter will work. It depends on the concentration that's been put through the filter to be filtered. So my thing is that it's important for the neighborhood to not have to deal with this and be able to enjoy their surrounding of their house with their windows open, doors open, screens or what have you, and not have to deal with the smell. Now, we know for a fact that you can tell when marijuana is being smoked. Never mind when it's being cooked. It's probably a lot higher than the smoking of it is. It gets in the air, you can smell it at great distance. Even though the atmosphere itself, with the wind speed, what is ideal wind speed? Ideal wind speed is 3 to 5 miles an hour. And at the point of release, the wind will carry downwind or carry it upwind, depends on which direction the wind is blowing. The wind is measured at every 2,000 feet. It can be going south at 2, it can be going north at 4. It can be going east at 6, or going west at 8,000 feet. But the fact is that it's going downwind. The natural gases that are in the atmosphere is used to neutralize most things that are released into the atmosphere. And it depends on what is called downwind distance. Let's just use an example. 1,000 feet downwind, you can smell it. 1,001 feet, you can't smell it. So that means that the atmosphere has done its job in neutralizing that smell. And with the wind pushing it down and breaking up and dispersing it. But the thing that I find that 234 Taylor Street, Appoquin, is really not, you talk about hydrovac. They got hydrovac units there. Well, hydrovac unit is air conditioned. Every air conditioned system has filters there. So what does the air condition does for the filter? It takes and pushes that air through that filter. And it depends on how well that filter is designed. It would take particles out of the air as it goes through it. Now, you can get some filters that is good for mold. In the atmosphere, we know there is moisture in the air. So certain filters are set up that it is more qualified to deal with certain particles. And for instance, where you have moisture in the air, that filter is designed whereas that it will take and stop that moisture from going through into the air as it goes on through. They tend to say that, oh, the smell is in the water. Well, we all know that air has moisture in it. Keep circulating it. Is that really going to get rid of the smell? It may break it down based on the amount of time it's being circulated, but the fact to say that at the end, there's always going to be a smell from marijuana going out at 234 Taylor Street. I think that they can do a better job. And that's why I'm telling you, and I think on the 16th of this month, they're going to be back before the planning board. And their host agreement is also up for renewal as well. And I guess the host agreement is usually done first and then they go to the planning board. Well, this time they're coming in the planning board because they're asking for to extend the operation at 234 Taylor Street. So what was my options? My options in telling the planning board and the select board was that here's some things that I think that they have to do. A consultant specializing in control of marijuana smell is almost non-existent. You're not going to find that. As I told you early on, you can talk about people that install ductwork, people that install ducts into labs. That's the closest you're going to find somebody being able to tell you how they control the smell or whatever the case may be, or the odor, and what type of filters that they're using to control that so that they can discharge into the environment with clean air. No one is authorized to put a hazard in the atmosphere. Nobody. That's why they put procedures in place with certain things that you have to do. And you have to do filters. Just like the filters on the PFAS in the water treatment plant here in Lilton, it's about a $500,000 cost to dispose of them. That's a lot of money to dispose of filters. So if it costs that much to dispose of, I guess you have to guess how much it will cost to get one. In order to do the job they're supposed to is to filter out the PFAS in the water. That's what it's for. And to do that, you got to have a filter that can do that job. It's very costly. To get rid of it, it's very costly anytime you want to dispose of something. Some things you can't do. Some things you can't no longer bury it in the ground. No more burying the toxic chemicals in the ground. The only place left, and it takes an act of Congress to give the approval, is at sea. So this particular situation with the applicant at 234 Taylor Street, I think they really need to try and do the right thing. And to me, the right thing is is to put in a system that will do it. Why are they so resistant to putting in a negative pressure system? I don't understand it. Talking about monitoring outside the building, never heard of such a thing. That means you got cracks in the wall and the pressure inside is positive that they say in the growing system is pushing it outside through the walls. And I say that shouldn't be the case. They should be controlling. That's the key. They should be controlling the smell and where it's at. That it doesn't exit the doors of the facility. That it goes through a filter system that can neutralize it. That's the name of the game, is to neutralize it. And have a good tie and relationship with the community. They're making good money from this product. There's no question about it. But at the same token, they just come in and they just throw this at us and really don't tell us exactly in detail. They don't know if it's going to work or not. This is what they're saying it will do. So here was my suggestion to the town. How the planning board proceed to address the marijuana smell dilemma. I call it a dilemma because that's what it is. Neither the planning board or the select board have experience or knowledge in controlling the procedures of issues or other similar gases in the atmosphere. I don't believe any of them have any training into that or knowledge as far as that goes. Why do I have the knowledge? I have the knowledge because I was in the nuclear, biological, chemical, and radiological field for 30 years. And I deal with toxics. And for instance, every soldier or every military that's in the every military individual that is in the United States Armed Forces is the issue of protective mask. It either has 2 charcoal filters in the mask, or there may be a canister that is on the mask. But that canister and those charcoal filters and no protective mask will protect the individual against all known toxic chemicals. And if you haven't smelled chlorine, you know chlorine has a real loud smell to it. We used to test people in the chlorine chamber until they stopped it. You would go in there, you wouldn't smell anything until you broke the seal on your protective mask. Then you would smell the smell of chlorine. But then you had to clear your protective mask from the gas that you let inside of your protective mask. And once you had another proper seal, you wouldn't smell the gas anymore. So that tells you marijuana smell is not as loud as chlorine smell is. So if charcoal will neutralize the chlorine odor or smell, what do you think it would do to the marijuana smell? It would neutralize it. You wouldn't smell it. So, I says, for a limited period of time, like a 90-day period, let them use the methodology that they're presenting to the planning board and saying, this is how this will work, this is how that will work, and so forth and so on. Let's see if it produces any complaints. If it produces complaints, then they need to shut down the operation. Then they need to probably try and do what is suggested that they should do, and that's put in a negative pressure system. In all these areas that they have the kitchen, the packing and sealing, the storage, and the shipping dock. All those areas, in my opinion, should be on a negative pressure system, because in those areas they're going to produce smell, and the smell is going to be marijuana. And to say there's always going to be a smell of marijuana, well, it should be the smell of marijuana as long as you're inside of the facility. Once you're outside the facility, you shouldn't have to deal with the nuisance of smelling marijuana. That's my thing. Now, I know that the representatives that they had that presented this information to the planning board, I said that they were smoking guns. They don't know whether or not this is going to work. And I said to the planning board, the only way you're going to find out if it works, you're going to have to give them the opportunity to put this methodology in place, in operation, to see if it does work. If it works and eliminates any smell, okay, fine. But if it doesn't, then you need to deal with it. And I also told the select board that they need to put this in the host agreement, that if complaints are produced with the methodology that they presented, then they need to go to a negative pressure system. By the way, I've written up a general bylaw addressing marijuana smell as to what they should do. And I'm just using the common sense approach as to how you control smell. And the logic that I use is, how do we control toxic gases, which all have smells? And having worked in that field, I'm just using the common sense approach as to how we control that and how we can apply that and use it with the marijuana smell. So that's what I'm doing, and hopefully at the May town meeting that we'll pass something, because as it stands right now, the select board nor the planning board have no bite into this marijuana smell. They have no regulation on file. They have no ordinance on file, no bylaw on file. They have nothing on file. So it's how do you deal with this situation? And they know that you don't have anything. So, you got to use the elimination process here to try to get rid of it. And my suggestion is, let's give them the opportunity to use the methodology that they're using, or said that they can use and control it, and see what happens. That's the best you can do. And I suggest to people in the Taylor Street community over there that you come to the next meeting on the 16th of November and put your input in as to what you think and so forth and so on. I have the knowledge of working in the toxicological field, and I know what my experience has been. And I worked a few years in research and development as well. And they come in and try to sort of kind of knock me about my knowledge and so forth. I just maintained my cool and said nothing. I know what I got up here, and I know the experience I got up here, And I consider, having been in the top 5% of the nuclear biological chemical field, I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm talking about. And I've served with the highest element in the Department of Defense to react to a nuke, bio, or chem, or radiological weapon anywhere that the United States has territory. In New Jersey, we had a plane that was on standby to carry us anywhere in the world. In 1974, the tetrachloride tank that busted loose in Chicago, then when Mayor Daley was there, my unit went up there and helped the fire department to bring that under control. If you remember, back around 78, Great American Chemical Plant blew up in Fitchburg. And I happened to be here, and I happened to go down to people standing out there with their kids and their babies on the Bemis Bridge down there, breathing in the hazard that was coming from that explosion of Great America. And when I found out that they had requested that all the fire department and policemen that worked that detail go and have their blood drawn because they want to make sure that the chemical was not in their body because it was a destroyer of the liver. And I said that every person that was downwind should be tested as well. They said to me, Mr. Sanders, this is not the place to talk about the technical aspects of it. I said, it is the place to talk about the technical aspects of it because y'all trying to get over on the people here. And I said the same thing to 234 Taylor Street. You're trying to get over on the people here. Do the right thing. So I'm going to see what's going to happen. But we're going to put this law in place. Hopefully the people will vote for it. That's the only way that you're going to control it is to have some bite. And right now you have no bite. As always, I wish to thank each and every one of you for listening to what I have to say. And may God bless you. And have a good day.